and welcome to Fair Observer Talks. My name is Elizabeth Tate, and with me today is Ankita M. Kumar. She is an Indian American journalist who's got family roots in West Bengal. Welcome, Anita. Ankita, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. On
Thanks
August
for having me
9th,
here. Yeah.
thank you. On August 9th, the body of 31-year-old Dr. Malmita Debnath was discovered in a seminar room at RG Kar Medical College and Hospital in Kolkata, West Bengal. Autopsy reports revealed that the victim had been forcibly raped, possibly by multiple assailants, and then strangled. And Ankita is here to talk about this story today. And we just want to issue a trigger warning up front that we will be discussing themes of sexual assault and violence towards women. So if that is a sensitive topic for our listeners, we just want to make sure you know that that's coming. So, Ankita, this is a horrendous crime, obviously. But I think that's even more shocking than the details of this crime of itself is the fact that this state-run medical college officials tried to cover this story up. So could you tell us a little bit more about that cover up and what's happened here?
Yeah, so let's go to the beginning. So on beginning of August, August 9th, a body of a 31-year-old doctor was found, trainee doctor, at RG Medical College in Kolkata, which is one of the metro cities. So we have four metro cities in India: Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, and Calcutta, which is now called Kolkata. And what happened in the aftermath was that initially there was a long time to register the first information report of the crime. So that's the first place where, we have some suspicion as to why it took so much time. The body was discovered in the evening, the FIR was filed in the night. The parents were initially told it was a suicide, whereas the body was found in a very horrendous condition, with blood flowing from her genitals, from her eyes, and it was just it was very clearly an incident of rape, assault, and murder, and that was not being acknowledged at the beginning. And the hospital officials botched this thing up. There were claims that the police also botched things up. The autopsy was conducted very quickly. The body was, burned without, like letting other people take a look at it, or another autopsy being conducted. So the entire system itself was so botched up that, by the time that people started getting emotional and protests erupted, um, there was just a lot of fake information going out around as to what happened that night. And one person was arrested, and he was named the prime accused in the case. And it was very disturbing to learn that he apparently used to visit porn sites and used to look at on porn sites used to look at a lot of disturbing things, and he had a very demented mind. That's what the claims are. And he was immediately arrested, but he was also a civic volunteer, so he was basically allowed into the hospital. So the questions arise as to how he got access to the seminar room, and the bigger question is, why did the doctor have to sleep in the seminar room? That's because there are no facilities for doctors. She had worked a 36-hour long shift. She had no place to sleep. And she was sleeping in the seminar room, and that man came and raped her. And there are also claims that it might have been a gang rape. So there's a lot of things going around in this case that we can talk about in detail, but that's pretty much what happened. And since then, there have been multiple protests. The Indian Medical Association has called for a call for protests. Doctors went on strikes. Women have been protesting across, Calcutta, just saying, enough is enough. We are done with this, and it's also called into question current state government's like the current state government's governance, and the way it has handled this crime, and the way it has been handling its governance in general. So that's pretty much the long story of what has been happening over the past 1 month.
I want to touch on the doctor strikes and the protests that you mentioned. Trinamool Congress MP Arup Chakraborty has said that the public is going to blame doctors if patients die while they're away, while they're striking and doing this protests. What would you say to that claim?
First of all, I would say the doctors have a legitimate reason to be protesting. This case has taken away from the main question, which is the condition of doctors in India. If you look at the state of a doctor, compared to any and we are talking about a developing nations whose GDP has crossed the UK. So India can no longer claim to be a nation which is, which is grappling with a lot of which should not, it should not even be grappling with these problems in the first place. We need to have an infrastructure in place for our healthcare system. If we are a democracy, which is, we are the world's largest democracy, we need to be acknowledge the fact that we also have a lot of flaws, and just boosting the economy for the top 1% of the population is not going to do much for the country. I'll explain the healthcare system in India. So doctors complete a 5-year MBBS training. After that, they have to serve 2 years, at least 2 years, in a rural area. And so a lot of women doctors who get posted in these rural areas, the hospitals don't have any infrastructure. There are sometimes no washrooms for the doctors. There are no places for the doctors to sleep. There's no bed, there's nothing provided. Doctors are like literally like coming in for like 24, 36-hour shifts. They're working without sleep. There are patients coming in every minute, and you have to, and if it's a government hospital, you have to take in every patient. There have been incidents of violence against doctors when doctors have said, we can, when they've given bad news to the family members, or they haven't been able to handle a case. Like, this infrastructural issue has been there since forever. And what we need to now acknowledge is that we don't have any system in place for our doctors who are overburdened and overworked. India is an extremely populous country. Every year, we botch up our medical examinations. Like, every year, there is a controversy around the way the medical examinations are conducted. We have a national exam called the NEET for admissions into medical colleges. Every year, there's a controversy around the admission process. There's a controversy around the number of seats in medical colleges. There's so many issues with I can't even begin to dig into our healthcare problem. It's a crisis. And in 2021, when we had the second wave of COVID, our entire system collapsed. There were no hospital beds for people. People were dying on the streets. They were dying in vehicles. They were dying in the hospital corridors. Is this the system of a developing nation that aims to have like $1 trillion economy? I don't think so. I think we need to acknowledge the fact that India is going through this kind of a crisis with its healthcare system, and the doctors are exhausted and tired of the government not making sure, not allocating any budget for their benefit. And I think in general, this case has showcased how difficult it is for female doctors, like, to go out into the workforce. They are not safe in their own hospitals. So forget about being safe in our homes, or outside on the road. So this case has brought up so many issues about women's safety and about doctors' health and doctors' mental health and stress and everything, that I think this, we should not even be talking about the doctor strikes. The doctors are they have a legitimate reason to go on a strike. If anybody is blaming a doctor, it is because they don't know what, they have never been in the shoes of a doctor. So I honestly think they should not, that my personal view is, they should not be commenting on why a doctor is going on a strike or why a doctor is protesting, because you don't know how difficult it is to be a doctor in India. There is no system in place for a doctor. I
Hearing
hope
you
I'm being.
describe those conditions is mind-blowing to me as an American with only a conception of the American healthcare system, which sure we could say negative things about, but all in all is a very cushy system. I can't imagine seeing problems on such a wide scale like that in terms of resources and just conditions. And as you're saying, it's very ironic, right? When we're looking at what is supposedly a very developed economy and still seeing these conditions. What do you think is causing that juxtaposition and that mismatch of resources and leading to these issues?
I mean, it's hard to summarize it all, but I just a few points I would like to touch upon, which is the most critical at this point, is the health ministry has to be funded. There's a lot of corruption in the system. The moment you allocate, first of all, we don't even allocate that many resources for healthcare, which is a joke. In a country of 1.4 or 1.5 billion people, you're not allocating resources for healthcare. Most the system is broken to the extent that if somebody is privileged, they are able to access private healthcare. So private healthcare is extremely expensive. And so you can go and access it, and if you have insurance you can access the private healthcare system. But the rest of the population, which is the rest 99.99% of the population, which cannot afford private healthcare, has to go to these government hospitals, and the waiting times are crazy. Like, I'll give you an example. In 2022, my grandmother had a heart attack, and she had to be admitted in the hospital, and I took her to a government hospital. The emergency room was overflowing. They had no space for patients in the emergency room. So they were prioritizing which patients were closer to death. They were being given the emergency room, and they were being given oxygen and critical resources. So they took in my grandmother because she was a heart patient. She was also, an octogenarian. So they took her in. But like, she was in that emergency room for like over 8 or 9 hours, and we had to wait for her to get an intensive care room, because there was no intensive care room available, because there are just so many patients in the hospital, right? And there's so many people coming in with so many health problems. First of all, I can't even begin to state the fact that we have so many health problems because of so many issues, which starts from first our diet. It starts from being fed all these trans fats since we were a kid. Our diet has been destroyed by a lot of the fatty foods or the junk food that has been coming in from especially countries like America. So we don't have a good diet in the first place. Living in India is extremely stressful. Even for little resources, you have to like fight a lot. You don't have electricity, you don't have water, so it's a stressful life to just live there. And for the bottom population, I can't even begin to, like, the sanitation conditions are so bad. So there are just so many things in this, and people are afflicted with health problems, and doctors, what happens is that the doctors are seen as god in India. So they are overburdened. So what happens is, your patient goes to a doctor, they expect the doctor to cure you, and if the doctor is not able to do their job, then you beat up the doctor, or you shout at the doctor, or you like have a commotion in the hospital. Like, it sounds like sounds like a crazy thing out of a movie, but it's a reality in India. And it's very sad that we have these social problems, and then we have the government which is doing nothing to tackle these actual issues. We would rather sit and talk about religious divisions in India, and we would rather sit and talk about, oh, refugees are coming in from neighboring countries. These are the issues we're talking about, because at the end of the day, the politicians just care about their vote. They don't care if an average doctor in India is overburdened to the extent that they can't even give time to their family. They don't care if the healthcare system is botched up to the extent that people are dying because they're not getting hospital beds or medicines. They don't care. And the point is that we as people have to understand that and vote for the people who can actually make a difference to this country. But to be honest, the healthcare system's been broken since independence. So, and the pandemic was a very good example of showcasing how underprepared we were as a nation. So I can't even begin to, like, I mean, this is such a this if I answer this, this can go on for days. But yeah, this is pretty much my viewpoint, and I know there'll be people who disagree with me, but this is pretty much what I think. The start should be our diet and our health. That has to be taken care of. Then that ties into the government's handling of the healthcare system. So we have to fix something so that the doctors are not overburdened. Either you give the doctors more resources, or you make sure the people have a better lifestyle and eat better food and don't suffer, don't there's no pollution and all these social problems affecting them, so that they end up in going to the hospital. So fix either of them. That would be my advice.
I appreciate that advice, and I appreciate that perspective of taking a holistic kind of preventative lifestyle approach, because I think so often when we talk about medicine and disease, we talk about treating symptoms and not the social ills that lead to the symptoms in the first place. So, fascinating perspective there. Earlier, you mentioned the different regions. And so I would love your perspective on what this specific situation, this incident, says about West Bengal specifically. And do you think that something like this would have occurred in a place like Delhi?
So, for context, I was in Delhi when the Nirbhaya case happened several years ago, and I was a student at Delhi University in my final year, and the incident happened just 20 minutes away from my college, and that was the mall where we used to go to. So, the first thought that came to my head as a 21-year-old was, this could have been me. And when this happened in Kolkata, and this woman was exactly my age, the same thought came to my head again. It could have been me. So the point is, wherever you live in India, you are not safe. The India has an issue with the way women are treated, with the way women are seen. You are not safe in any part of the country. Now the thing is, what the irony is that when the Nirbhaya incident happened and it blew up so much in the international press, unfortunately, the chief minister of Delhi at that time was a woman. Unfortunately, this time around, when this has blown up in the international media, the chief minister of West Bengal is a woman. So it's an irony that, when you have women chief ministers, you would expect safety for women to improve, but turns out it's just getting bad. Now, shifting the context to West Bengal. So I would say my observation as a person who's seen West Bengal as a kid, I used to visit West Bengal very frequently as a kid. My observation is that this state is grappling with an identity crisis. So unlike in America, where we have a very clear distinction, there's the Midwest, there's like the West Coast, there's the East Coast. In India, the thing is, there is no clear demarcation because every state has had its own trajectory. So we can't really put anyone in a section and say, oh, the West Coast states are like this, or the East Coast states are like that. you know um, like we can't say that about because because the region of Bengal, like, let me explain. So the region of Bengal was originally composed of Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. They were three states together as part of Greater Bengal. And then what happened when independence happened? Then these states were separated, and then Bihar and Odisha grappled with their own issues. So Bihar has had a very bad human development index. So for a long time, Bengal and Bihar were compared, where Bengal was seen as a superior state because we had a lot of intellectuals coming out from that state. There was a lot of social development, a lot of social reforms came out of that state. This was one of the states that first embraced English. So we had a lot of people, going into higher education, speaking English. So this was a state that was seen as a beacon of knowledge and progress. This is back in the day. Now, coming to present day, what has happened is that we had communist governments. Two states of India have had communist governments consistently. One is West Bengal, and the other is Kerala. If I'm missing any state in the northeast or any other state, then forgive me. But my limited awareness is these two states have had a communist party rule for a very long time. So in Bengal, what happened was that even though that catchment area of that state has there's a lot of fertile land, and there's a lot of labor that's freely available in that region that can come to Calcutta. But still, even though that region had the possibility of developing ahead of others, they failed. And they failed miserably because of a communist government, because the communist government is to encourage the labor class to strike. Now, I'm not saying that I disagree with communism, or I believe in socialism or capitalism or anything, but the point is, if you are trying to run a business and you go and open up a plant in a state, and the labor class is all going on strikes every alternate day, then nobody would want to invest in that state. And then things came to a head in 2008 when Tata, which is a car company, they wanted to open a plant. Almost opened a plant in West Bengal in a place called Shingur, which was I would pretty much say at that time it was like a hamlet, a village. It was not a very big town. And there were a lot of people who had bought houses in Shingur close to that plant because they were expecting employment. That area was expected to get developed, and the plant construction was almost complete. And at that time, right before the plant inauguration, Mamta Banerjee, who was the current chief minister of Bengal, led this massive protest against Tata, calling it a capitalistic vehicle, and just saying that this land was taken away from farmers. This is agricultural land. It was taken away. The West Bengal government, the communist government, freely handed over the land to the Tatas, and all that. And because of that protest, Tata left West Bengal and opened their plant somewhere else. And now that land, I'm not kidding you, there's nothing there. Like, that agricultural land wasn't even returned to the farmers. So that protest was basically just a political game. And Mamta Banerjee then came to power and became the chief minister of West Bengal. And I remember I was in high school. I was visiting my uncle in West Bengal, and when she got elected, like there were chants on the street, people were going crazy. Like that's the kind of craze she had. Like she was like this massive people's leader. And at that point of time, when I was in high school, I was very inspired, because I was like, oh, she's a woman, like she's so powerful, and she's has this massive following. But things went completely south. Like things have gone so south since she came to power. Her party, the Trinamool Congress, has all the people who were in the Communist Party joined her party. But the problem is that these people have become goons. They're running the state like a banana republic. They are running it like anybody who affiliates with the party is basically like, like on friendly terms with them, and anybody who's anti their party is basically against them. So now there's a situation in West Bengal that from businessmen to doctors to in like college institutions, everybody has to pander to the TMC. So even though we are saying at the national level, the BJP, Indian government, the central government also has that kind of an attitude. But the thing is that because it's West Bengal is one state, it's not given that level of criticism that a central government is given. So Mamta Banerjee has a history of not accepting criticism. She has a history of letting her goons run free and run the state, like like I'll give you examples. I know an administrative service officer in Bengal who was telling me that Mamta Banerjee's nephew, when he comes to, I think he's being seen as a political heir or something like that. When he visits some constituency, he's supposed to be given chief minister level security. Why? Why should he be given Z level of security? Who is he? And also, like, there are stories of how Mamta is, Miss Banerjee's basically like her TMC people are like, they are asking for money, like corruption money, to allow any development projects to pass. So basically, even if you give money to the West Bengal state government, that money is not going to permeate to the people. It's going to go into the pockets of the TMC. So this is just absurd. Like this, all these things have been happening for so long, and unfortunately, a lot of people of West Bengal are supporting Mamta Banerjee. A lot of people see her as an antithesis to Modi. But honestly, I would say I don't care if at this point, I mean, I am leaving aside the national politics. I'm keeping aside Modi, keeping aside right wing Hinduism, Jingoism, whatever is going on. Let us just look at West Bengal in isolation. Even if Mamta is saying Modi is a bad person, or right wing Hinduism is bad for the country, what have you done for the state? You have a history of basically, there were a lot of illegal immigrants in that region. She has given them ration cards so that they vote for her. Now, that because of what she has done, this has become a national issue, because then at the national level, people are talking about illegal immigration. They're blaming a lot of the migrants for being Bangladeshi, even though they might actually be Rohingya. They might not be Bangladeshi. But because of this, it's blown up at a national level because of what she has done. And because of that, we now have a discriminatory law called the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act. And now there are innocent people being put into camps, and they might be forced to leave India forever, just because this one woman decided to strengthen her voter base by giving ration cards to some maybe illegal or legal, I don't know at this point. But the point is, she has been doing these things. I personally know somebody who was affiliated with the TMC, who was corrupt to the extent that even though he lived in a small town, he built a lift in his house. It costs a lot to have a lift on a 3-floor house. Then he imported grass from another country to have imported grass in his lawn. Like, this is absurd. Like, I have heard these stories for forever. And even women's safety has gone down to the extent that, I'll tell you the way people talk now in Calcutta. They'll say, oh, don't go out at night, don't take a cab, Calcutta is not safe. This is not the Calcutta I knew when I was growing up. I knew Calcutta as the place where women were progressive, women were vocal, when women used to go out on the streets. So what happened? What went wrong? And things have been going wrong for a very long time. Like, if you look at if you look at metrics, there was a gender development matrix, HDI metrics, and there was gender parity as one of the issues in it. And in the HDI index, in terms of gender parity, West Bengal ranks one of the lowest. So we are actually going back in time. We are not even going ahead. There are no jobs in the state. There's no development in the state. So what is she doing? So it is high time that we acknowledge that this state has failed and look at it in a vacuum rather than looking at it at a national level. Like for example, in the US, if if you look at development, if we have one state coming and saying, Minnesota coming and saying that, I'm not able to develop compared to like a Kansas or some other state, or like California. I mean, you would look at that state in isolation, right? You wouldn't blame it like, oh, California is taking away my resources. It doesn't work that way. So I'm surprised that we're even having this discussion and Mamta is not even thinking of resigning. I honestly think that the way she's handled the situation and the kind of measures she's brought up, are you aware that she's actually brought out safety measures that say that women should not be working after hours after 7 p.m. So now she's giving reasons for companies to not hire women. And she's also said that there will be something called a Rater Shati, which is basically like a safety police for women, or which will be staffed by volunteers. What kind of volunteers? I wouldn't want to, be escorted by a volunteer home. I don't know who that volunteer is. The guy who committed the rape in Arjikar, um, he was a civic volunteer. So I don't even understand why they're bringing out all these policy measures when it's actually not going to do anything. And also, let's acknowledge the fact that if the TMC, anybody from the TMC was involved in this particular rape incident, that person is not going to go to jail. Nothing is going to happen to that person. So this is a banana republic. So I am very ashamed to sometimes say that my roots lie in West Bengal, because it's just the state of the state is terrible. And I know I'm going on a rant, but I have been meaning to say this out loud for a very long time. So thank you.
Of course, a rant is always welcome, and it's very unfortunate, right, that you're not able to have a sense of pride in your state. That's not a feeling that anybody wants to have. And yeah, as a fellow woman, I can't imagine that I would feel comfortable with this volunteer brigade of strangers. That does not seem like a practical measure to me at all. I want to stick a little bit and talk more about Mamta and the TMC. Another, let's say, interesting factor within this scenario is that the medical college and the police answer to her. And so she has appointed Sandeep Ghosh, the now disgraced principal of the RG Carr Medical College, as head of the Calcutta National Medical College within hours of his resignation. And in the past, Dr. Ghosh has been accused of, quote, squandering government money, evading financial rules, nepotism in choosing vendors and taking bribes from them, and irregularities in recruiting contractual staff by his subordinates. You've already touched on this a little bit, but it seems like there's kind of this widespread corruptive element in the TMC. Can you speak a little bit more? I know you already have touched on it, but about how that has been allowed to proliferate, and if there's any kind of solution, what that might be?
That is exactly my problem with West Bengal. I am sure Sandeep Ghosh was very pally with the TMC, which is why he got appointed as soon as he was removed from Archikar. So that reflects the kind of issues that are there in that state. And it's very unfortunate. The kind of stuff he's also said about women in the past has been very problematic. And now I think the Supreme, I think Justice Chandrachud has brought this up in court as well. About how his appointment has happened and how this case was handled. So I would say in general, like a lot of the people in West Bengal, um, even though they want to maybe protest, or they want to say something against the government, they know that the only reason they will progress in their career is if they are pally with the government, which is very unfortunate. So a lot of the people you see in positions of power are people who are affiliated in some way to the Trinamool Congress. So these people are being actively shielded by the government. And unfortunately, because we have a system where the states are sort of autonomous, you can't really, you can't really interfere in state matters unless there's a precedence rule. So there have been calls for a precedence rule, and the Calcutta police has also been called out. So I would say more than Sandeep Ghosh. Sandeep Ghosh is part of the problem, but we also need to look at the police system. The police has failed miserably. And if the police had actually had any form of autonomy, or the police was actually doing its job, it would have arrested Sandeep Ghosh at the beginning itself, and they wouldn't have let him off the hook. So the fact that he was let off the hook itself means that the entire system is, it shields these predators. So, very unfortunate that we have a women CM, but we are actually discussing these issues. And also, like in terms of financial irregularities, like this is so like normal for us, like financial irregularities, corruption. It's very common for Bengalis to just accept it as part of the system now. And these were there in the past. I'm not saying that the previous government was very good. We have had serious cases of corruption. The metro, took 20 years to get constructed. God knows how much money everybody must have earned. But the point is that the state of West Bengal is slowly becoming a place where people are no longer motivated to see the state progress. They sort of are in this very lazy kind of a mode where they're like, we have done whatever we had to do. The state, it is what it is, and we have to, maybe go and look for jobs in other states, or or we live here and live a comfortable life. For example, I'll tell you how comfortable life is there. The prices of vegetables and fruits are lower than most parts of the country. It's subsidized. Everything is cheaper in that state. So people have a very relaxed life. It's a very relaxed mode of life. It's like, you feel like you're on an endless vacation. But my question is, for this is the privileged class which is on an endless vacation. What about the people who are, at the bottom? Have you ever thought about them? Have you thought about the rest of the state? If you look beyond Calcutta, you look at the rest of the state, it's in a very dire condition. People are very poor. A lot of people are depending on agricultural land. If if there are droughts, there's nobody to help them. They constantly need subsidies. So there's a lot of poverty across the state. So how long are we going to, live our comfortable lives and just say, oh, I am relaxing, I'm on a vacation? You can't be on a vacation endlessly. You have to get out of that moment where you have to realize that we are at a critical moment where we have to acknowledge that this state is a failed state. We cannot live in our bubble that, oh, when West Bengal, once West Bengal was the beacon of knowledge. It's not that anymore. Like, it's just, it's very unfortunate that this has happened, because the state has a lot of brilliant people, but it is what it is. So we have to get out of that. I mean, when I am criticizing, a lot of the times when I criticize the TMC, I have a lot of people, a lot of Bengali friends who just, get up and say, no, you can't oppose her, like she's done a lot for the state. And I'm not saying she's not done anything. When I was a reporter in India, and I went to report on the West Bengal elections, I traveled to interior parts of West Bengal. So she has done a lot of good work for women's education in particular. So a lot of girls actually stopped dropping out of school because she was giving incentives for them to stay in school. So there have been good initiatives that have been undertaken by Mamta Banerjee. But what is being outshadowed is the entire corruption in the system that's outshadowing everything. And because of this inherent corruption, today there has been a state that, even though Mamta has done so much for women's education, she couldn't save a woman in her state who has been so brutally murdered, assaulted, and killed. And only daughter of her parents. Her parents have nothing to look forward to, and that that family's life is completely destroyed. So what is the point of all those initiatives she's taken if she can't afford people basic sense of security against her own party people? Like, as long as we have people, or the goons of TMC, running around freely, no policy making is going to save any woman. At the end of the day, you again get assaulted. If you are if it's somebody affiliated with the TMC, that person is going to walk off scot free, because that's exactly what happens in West Bengal. If that person is not from TMC, then you're fine, then you might get justice. But if that person is affiliated with that party, then what's the point, of doing any policy making? I just don't understand that a lot of Bengalis say we should do policy making for women's rights. I don't see the point of doing any policy making, honestly.
I cannot imagine what women in West Bengal must be feeling right now. It's, you've touched on this a little bit. There's that mismatch of hopes, right? You see, oh, we have a female prime minister. Maybe things are going to get better. Maybe our interests are actually going to be focused upon now. Maybe this will mean something for us. But some of the most impactful parts of this conversation, at least for me, and maybe our listeners will agree, are where you've shared your own experiences emotionally about how this is not the state that you once knew, and how this could have been you. You are a woman. Something like this could have happened to you. And safety is one of our basic psychological needs. I mean, that's base level, bottom of the pyramid, that sense of safety. And as you stated earlier, life in India is very stressful. This is contributing to negative health outcomes. It's all very cyclical. And I imagine that constantly worrying for your safety and being told that you can't go outside after 7 p.m. is probably not conducive to living a psychologically or physically healthy lifestyle. So, bearing that in mind, that there is a psychological, emotional element to this, and bearing in mind that, as you said, policy initiatives may not be the route to solving these issues, are there any specific reforms that you would like to see in West Bengal that you think would be effective?
I would say before reform, acknowledgement maybe is great. Mamta lives in a bubble where she feels that, oh, I'm invincible. Maybe an acknowledgement that you might be voted out of power will be great, and the people of West Bengal have to vote her out of power. That would be number one. Number two would be the first reform I would love to see in West Bengal and across the country would be a reform to make doctors' lives better, give them better working conditions, improve the infrastructure of hospitals, make sure that a doctor or maybe staff hospital or encourage people to study medicine or staff hospitals better, handle things better. Don't make a doctor do 36-hour long shifts. That's inhuman. It's inhuman. No doctor should be made to work 36-hour long shifts without sleep and without rest. So we have to improve these conditions first across the country for doctors. That would be the first reform I would want to see. Second reform I would want to see is we need to stop victim blaming. The woman is not at fault for the assault. It is always and only the fault of the man. We have to acknowledge that. We have to stop creating these policies which restrict women in their homes and which give employers another opportunity to say, oh, I'm not going to hire a woman. We have enough problems already. Like, we don't need another person to come and just say we are not going to hire you because you're a woman. So we need to do policy making which takes into account women's priorities, and also which also makes sure that women are not restricted. So we handle the issue at a very core level where we acknowledge that the way men view women in India is problematic. So we have to handle the men. There need to be stricter regulations for. We already have very strict regulations. There was capital punishment for rape at one point of time, and there was you immediately get arrested the moment it's a rape case. So these are stringent measures, but we need to make sure those changes happen at the ground level when these kids are growing up. When men are young or boys are young, they shouldn't be taught that, oh, a woman is a public property, or they should not think that women, just because she's walking on the street, or she's wearing certain kinds of clothes, she's for out there for free consumption. Like, this is a sick mentality that needs to be destroyed at a young age. So we need to do basic level policy making where we have sex education in schools. We allow people to interact more freely with each other, women and men to interact more freely. And we give boys some kind of social condition. We have some kind of social conditioning or policy making that socially conditions men to view women as people, as human beings. And that conditioning that has to happen at a younger age, rather than them growing up and doing all these crimes. So psychological treatment and all these things need to be there. We also have to have, in terms of reforms, West Bengal particularly needs to have a reform in terms of it first of all needs to like be held accountable for the money that's being pumped into the state. Where is the money going? Why is the human development index not improving? Why is the safety of women so poor? We need to have some committee in place that assembles, gets together and assesses all the issues with West Bengal and holds Mamta accountable. So this is, rather than a reform, we need to have some kind of a some oversight into what's happening in every state, actually, not just West Bengal. Like, there are neighboring states are not doing much better either. So Bihar, Jharkhand, all these states close by, where women are living in dire conditions, or women are this there was a rape incident in Bihar just a couple of days after this incident. There are FIRs filed for women's assault. I mean, I think every like day, or like in a couple of hours. So these things are happening across India. So we have to, every state needs to be held accountable for how much women are being, treated, how women are, whether they're able to communicate freely or go out freely. These things need to be in place. So I would say, yeah, I mean, there are more reforms to this, but yeah, overall, doctors' health and safety and women's safety, these should be the top two areas of reform, I would say, going forward.
Thank you. You've given me a lot to think about, certainly, in terms of doctor safety, women's safety, and I hope you've done the same for our listeners as well. And I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight and for sharing your perspective on this horrifying topic.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I'm very glad we could talk about this, and we also could touch upon the West Bengal government, because I personally feel, and I mean, I didn't grow up in West Bengal. I grew up in another state, but because my origins are from West Bengal, and I still have family there. My grandmother still lives there. I just want to say that for me, this particular incident really hit hard, because I have I have grown up being very very proud to be a Bengali woman. Getting very emotional saying this, but I'm very proud to be a Bengali woman, because Bengali women in India are one of the most progressive. We have a very open mind. We're very vocal. We're very opinionated, and our society has empowered us to, be this way. And it's very heartbreaking to see a state which empowered its women to the extent that we were the first state to ban sati. Where the woman used to jump into the funeral pyre of her husband. So we were the first state to ban that. We were one of the few places which allowed widow remarriage. We are a very progressive state in a lot of ways, and the people are wonderful. And it breaks my heart to think that, these very people have, just because of the politics of the situation, are losing track of how great we have been in terms of women's rights. So I feel very bad that this happened in a place like Calcutta, because this is like, just look at the case, right? This woman Momita was an only child of her parents. That itself is such a progressive mindset in India. And if you look at West Bengal, a lot of girls you might see are single children, and their parents are giving all their resources and all, putting all their energies into educating these girls, and making sure they have a good career. So it breaks my heart to think that we have this kind of a safety issue in the state. And I really hope that listeners take away from this an opportunity to reform the state of West Bengal, and not see my statements as an attack on Mamta, because that is not what I'm trying to do. I really hope that we see this as a way to reform things in the state.
Heartbreaking is an apt word, and I hope listeners will have the same takeaway, and that some positive reform will come from this. It's unfortunate that often tragedy is what sort of sets that in motion, but hopefully there will be some good, some social reform.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope so.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.